Good day, my fellow interwebers. We're going to review a few podcasts. The first being from the Tim Ferriss show. He interviewed last weekend Shay, who has the Shay Tards on YouTube. I guess you would call him a YouTuber, not a podcaster. What a brilliant podcast this was. What I got from it mainly was the whole fact that cliche really rules the day. We don't want to admit that most cliches are true, but this was particularly funny because there is a ton of wisdom in cliche, and they were both lamenting that fact that even though we don't want to believe it, most cliches are true. They also got into a little bit of Anthony Robbins' way of doing priming in the morning. I have to say, priming for me is absolutely incredible. Your physical state will dictate your mental mood. So every morning I get up, I make sure I have my bulletproof coffee. That's a shout out to Dave Asprey and the Bulletproof Exec. I'll get into all of his podcasts. He's been just a bastion of brilliant information for me these last 3 years. But my particular priming in the morning is I have my bulletproof coffee. I do some exercise with my dog. We'll usually go for a walk. I'll do some acro yoga. Now it's the rainy season here in Costa Rica, so I'll dig some ditches and move some firewood and, kind of do the farm workout type thing. And that's a shout out to my other friend, Fit Farmer. I highly, highly suggest that if your mental state is befuddling you, go ahead and give yourself a little kick in the pants and do something physical to get your hormones in check and, just get the blood pumping. And there's nothing wrong with a little sweat in the morning. There's one of the antidotes that they put out there was you can't make great decisions when you're in a shitty mood. And I completely believe that. So do your priming in the morning. There was a beautiful quote in the podcast also from Morgan Spurlock saying, own your scars. This is one thing about being an authentic individual. It's not necessarily going out there and trying to always, present yourself in a specific way. To be authentic is to be humble. And all of us through life, we all have our troubles, and we all have these things that kind of slap us around a little bit. And it's important to own those things. And when you admit that you make mistakes, then you can fix them. If you don't admit that you make mistakes, or you're constantly trying to point out other people's mistakes, then you're going to have problems in rectifying your own consciousness. And this has been a wonderful lesson for me to learn throughout my life. This was a great podcast. Check it out on the Tim Ferriss show. You can go to the 4-Hour Work Week or the 4-Hour Blog. I forget which one. I'll put some attachments in the show notes here. I also listened to one of my favorite comedians, Duncan Trussell, today. His podcast is the Duncan Trussell Family Hour. And the reason why I love his podcast is he's funnier than all get out, and he's always getting into the philosophical, religious side of things. Big shout out to Duncan Trussell. He interviewed Mike Kaplan today, and apparently Mike Kaplan has a podcast. I've never listened to it, but I'll put a link in the show notes. This was so funny, and it was so good because it somewhat like the Tim Ferriss podcast, it was talking about an existential existence. So imagine if you were always seeing what you were doing, and then imagine that everybody else could have total and utter transparency into your consciousness. That's coming. Technology is going to make that so. The NSA knows exactly what you're going to do before you do, especially if you're hooked up on the interwebs, because all your wants, needs, and desires are always running through some electronic medium. So they were looking at it from the interpersonal perspective, like how wonderful is it if you actually chose to examine your life as if everybody knew every single one of your thoughts. I myself have taken on this particular task over the last 4 months, and it's really been remarkable. Imagining that nothing in my mind's eye is hidden. my soul is always facing everybody else's soul. This is an incredible, incredible practice. So give these podcasts a good look-see. Tomorrow I'm going to go through a couple of Dave Asprey's Bulletproof Radio podcasts from this last week. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to be doing this every day, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the synopsis. Please check out PodVlog.com. And I will be putting this... Yeah, this will just be a YouTube site, so enjoy.